Good evening, everyone. We'll give folks some time to come in. You should see on your screen instructions for translation services if you need it. You can click on the globe icon that says interpretation, and you can select the language that's appropriate for you. We recommend that you mute the original audio so that you don't hear both English and your language at the same time unless you want to. Give it a few more seconds. It looks like it's settled in to about 80 attendees. So, Dr. Stowe, I'm going to share the slides. Okay.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Tim Stowe, the interim superintendent, and happy to join you here tonight. And thank you for your interest in the distance learning / independent study program, and we'll explain that here for you tonight. So also thank you to our translators who are here to provide support in your primary languages. We, as a diverse community that we are very grateful for not just you as parents and what you bring to our district, but also to those folks that work for us and provide the service to be able to allow you to access in your primary language this very important information. So tonight we're going to go through and if you can go to the next slide, Gil, talk about a little bit about the virtual options that you have for this next year, and then take some questions and answers. So moving on. So I briefly want to talk about this year, and just am so thankful for everything that our staff have done and that parents have done to make sure that it's been a safe year for students. We have had more students on campus than any other district in the county of Los Angeles. We had students on as early as late September and early October for in our special education programs and some of our learning cohorts where students needed to be on campus. We also had high school athletics. Hundreds of students on campus every day participating in conditioning and skill building work in different sports. And then in December, we were one of the first districts to bring back our earliest learners. Kindergarten and first grade came back in January, and then in February and March, all of the rest of the grades. And so, we did this safely. I know many of you have students that were in the distance learning program, but we did not have any transmission of COVID on our campus. And that's because we followed the protocols from the Department of Public Health, and we took it very seriously. We were visited every school was visited by the Department of Public Health staff, and we received very high marks for the protocols and for providing a safe atmosphere for students to learn in. And I think that's really important to tell you, because we will do the same next year. We have continued to follow the Department of Public Health guidelines, and we will do so as we move toward the start of the new school year on August 26th. We believe that in-person learning is the best, and that we want our students of all grade levels in person, where they are with a highly qualified teacher, with their peers in the classroom, with access to counselors or administrators, whatever supports that they need. Although we do believe that some of you may need, or at this point in time are going to select a different model to be able to remain at home, I do want to assure you that that our focus is on all students and the learning for each and every one of them, and so we're going to present some information here for you tonight. So, like I said, school starts August 26th. We would like that to be in person. Again, we think that's the best environment, although we know each family situation is unique. And so we will follow the DPH guidelines, and Dr. Crumpy is going to talk through a little bit of the independent study model. So the state last year, or for this current year, has provided distance learning guidance regarding how school can be accessed by students. That guidance and that allowance expires on June 30th. And we are hearing that the state is not going to allow the true distance learning beyond June 30th. So what does that mean? We also have at our disposal the independent study guidelines that have been adopted through the state of California. And so those are the guidelines that we, at this point in time, are intending to follow. What I want to make clear is that the experience that your child had this year in distance learning will not be the same as what we are looking at for next year. And so tonight we'll go through some of those questions. Dr. Crumpy and Dr. Egan will talk a little bit about what that looks like at the secondary level for middle and high school. So we also, as part of the COVID relief funds that we received from the state of California, we are hiring additional teachers. We want to provide a little bit more room in the classrooms, so we are reducing class size to make sure that we can maintain distancing within the classrooms. We also don't know at this point in time if masks will be required, but again, we will follow the guidance from the Department of Public Health and look at that. And even if masks are not required, you can still have your child wear a mask at school. It just may not be required of all students. Here's a picture that you can see. We ordered over 5,000 new single student desks, and we've set up a classroom that shows how students may be distanced within a classroom to be able to provide roughly 30 to 32 students in a secondary room, which allows for adequate distance between students. And those new desks were again purchased out of the one-time money that we received from the state. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Crumpy, who's going to go through more detail what the distance learning, really what the independent study program will look like at the middle and high school level, and answer some questions. Dr. Crumpy.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. You know, just a little over a year ago, when literally overnight we had to pivot and go into distance learning, it gave our teachers a few months of learning what worked well for your child and what worked well for your teacher. And when we started planning for this school year, we really utilized that experience to put our distance learning plan together and our blended learning plan together for the 2020-2021 school year. Now that we've done it for the entirety of a year, we've been able to do the same and have had the beginnings of lots of conversations around what worked, what didn't work. And so with that, I'd like to really have you strongly consider your student, your child, and a few of the descriptors that I'm going to go through in this first part is this the right match? Especially considering this is a secondary option. We know that your children can get vaccinated 12 and up, which is the large majority of our middle and high school families. And so we really want you to consider whether this is the right model. And so a few of the things that have kind of emerged is your child, how independent are they as a learner? Can they plan? Can they organize? Can they make lists of what's due and when it's due? Can they even keep track of when to log on and not, and what classes and what links to do that? Do you have a consistent learning environment at home? Preferably not right next to their bed in their bedroom. But do they have a consistent learning environment that allows them to get up, go into a place where they know they're in school, and ready to spend their day? And I think really importantly is, how well did they do this year? And not only just academically, but socioemotionally. And if you don't know the answer to some of these questions, I recommend that you reach out to a teacher or two, and they'll be able to help you. I think one of the things as we talk about this, there was I'm going to call this person a reluctant returner, who came back to school at our high school when we brought students back at the end of March. And this person actually came on the second day. So some friends came on day one, and they're texting, how was it? How did I do? And one of the things that by the end of the second day, so both friend groups were able to be in school one time, they said, we didn't realize how much easier it is to actually be in school in front of our teacher. And so, teachers are able to read their room, and I think what we miss, especially at the secondary level with 32 plus kids, on a Zoom link, is the informal learning that happens. The formal learning continues. The teacher is the teacher, the kids are learning, but so much of this is done by being able to, glance over, ask a peer a question, get back on track, and you can't do those things. And so our students that have returned, and we had some listening groups with our students that said, so much better being back in person. So that being said, two other things for making a decision of whether this is right for you and your family and your child is, how's the technology and the connectivity where you live? It's very stressful for your child when they get knocked out, they freeze, and they have to leave, and then they have to come back and get back in. And what did they miss? What directions did they miss? What part of that instruction? And so learning continuity is important if you live in an area where you're constantly you're frozen and getting knocked out of the Zoom rooms. And is there available adult support at home? For a lot of reasons, we're going to actually talk about them on the next slide. But even though they may be older, that doesn't mean that they should be at home learning, unsupervised, not able to ask someone for help, and having someone there even for moral support. Next slide, Gil. So Dr. Stowe mentioned, and we're going to talk about it a couple of times, the expiration of distance learning by the state of California as of June 30th. And so right now, the program that we're putting together is under the independent study guidelines. And one of the things that this requires is an annual contract or agreement. We're calling it a compact that the parent, student, and teacher signs. While the entire document is still being created, some of the things to consider. If you choose distance learning for next year, it is for the entire school year. So you need to know there's not back and forth and in and out availability for this program next year. You have to have consistent attendance. They're in the program. Also, and this is a little bit different than regular in-person school, but part of the independent study requirement is work completion. And so work is actually going to be collected and kept for audit purposes. And so your child has to has to do the work in this class. Missing assignments are a problem. You're going to be contacted that it's not okay to not do the work. They need to actively be engaged. Sometimes there's questions that come up that say, what do you mean by that? Does that mean you have to have your camera on? I will tell you that teachers prefer to have kids' cameras on. They realize that there are some circumstances and some conditions where kids feel more comfortable with their camera off, but there is still a way with a camera off to be actively engaged. Teachers ask me, so I'm going to mention it, the number of times that they realize, and, teachers are figuring out too how to get onto gaming platforms and check usernames, and they know that they're not paying attention and they're playing video games with classmates during class. That's not active engagement. And so if they don't have, that kind of goes back to the prior slide with the learning environment that is created for them to actively be engaged, probably not the program for them. And so, and I know this is redundant for the work completed by the student, but this is a requirement of independent study, is the amount of work that is completed. There will be, and I think this is important that you all hear this, is they will have to attend in person for some assessments. And so that will be worked out by the teacher, and they will need to come to school. So this, even though this is a distance learning option, there will be times where they are going to have to go to school and sit for tests. And I think it's also important to note that they will be returned to school. This contract, if it isn't but abided by, then it's void, and we return your child to the classroom. So this compact is a not the most fun things to talk about, but this is the program. Gil, next slide. Keep going. And again, and one more. You don't need, we did the elementary one earlier. So those are the first two of the big three things on this agenda tonight. Is this the right choice for my child, and what requirements are there? Now I want to talk to you about the option. And this is we won't be able to fully explain. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what it might look like. It all depends on the June 1st deadline, and then us madly working on June 2nd to determine what kind of program it looks like for your child. We do expect that your child can stay at the school for middle and high school. We expect that. If there's only 2 students from one school, it's possible that we consolidate and we may do a middle school per quadrant. That's not our hope. We do want to see that you'd be able to stay at your home school, but want you to know there's a possibility that they would be transferred to a different school for next year. If that were to happen, it would be only for the year, and then they would have absolute return rights back to their home school for the following year. So instead, we do expect to offer that they remain at their middle and high school, all based on numbers. I say this because the elementary program is different. The elementary program, they do not, with 17 different elementary schools, they do not remain at their school, and they're getting moved to a site that will be in charge of the distance learning. We do expect to allow for extracurricular participation in school activities. So if that's something that your child wants to do, we are going to allow for that. I'm gonna finish these and then kind of go back and talk through some scenarios. Do expect though that to have teachers from multiple schools, and maybe not even one from your child's school. And plan for for many of the classes in your child's 6-period day to be asynchronous. What does that mean? It's an independent study online course. So now I'm going to give a couple scenarios. So next year we are returning to a 6-period day. The 8 to 3 pre-pandemic bell schedule. And so wanting you to consider that if your child is in the band, what this might mean for you. And they want to still continue to participate in the band, that's 0 period. That's outside, you feel safer for some reason. And then you have to consider how you're getting them home in time for first period so that they log on and they're not tardy for class. Likewise, if they want to be in sports and that's period 6 and they have a period 5 class, consider, how they're going to get to their daily athletic practice or competition. Probably means that you as a parent, finishing class while they're in the car on a Zoom meeting, getting to class, that the bells, we're going to permit it and we're going to try to work with you. But it could be a challenge, and you need to know that commitment of getting your child back and forth in a time crunch. It's possible. So I'm going a scenario is that we have 30 freshmen that want distance learning. Great. All freshmen take English 1. So Dr. Egan and I next week are going to look at this and be able to say, okay, we now have 1 live class, synchronous class that we can offer for our freshmen. But now we look at the math class, and we've got, of those 30 kids, 10 of them are in Algebra 1, 10 of them are in geometry, and 10 of them are advanced and are already in Algebra 2. We will not be able to offer a class with only 10 students in it. That class may have to be online asynchronously. And so that's why I want to, with a Odysseyware, with an online platform curriculum. So I want to be very clear. Dr. Stowe, started out tonight's conversation about this. This is not the same distance learning program that we offered this year, when 30% of our families were distance learning. Our survey showed that it's 2 to 2.5% of our families. And that was before the vaccine became available for ages 12 through 15. We did the survey when it was only 16 and up. And so we are anticipating this being a very low number, and which will limit how many live classes that we can provide. So here's what's going to happen, because you're thinking, well, how am I supposed to select if I don't know what it's going to look like? You need to either decide whether to return your child to school, and then it will be the classes that they've asked for on their course selection will be able to be provided for them. If it's distance learning and you are set to have your child stay and learn from home next year, then you need to go and do that by June 1st. But the school is going to reach back out to you and let you know with some certainty how many of these classes will be online. So I think that's something else to consider. Your children, and yes, you may have heard the word asynchronous, but that your kids had asynchronous class time, but it was still their teacher assigning them that work on a daily basis. That is not what this is. So if it's a synchronous teacher teaching biology or teaching 7th grade science or a PE class, that they log on live to first period or 3rd period or 5th period every day, that will look something similar to this year. But the asynchronous courses are self-driven, independent study online courses that they work through. There is a teacher that will meet once a week to check in. They turn the work into them. It's graded. There's feedback given to them, but it is not instruction. And so you need to know that this is that those courses are not going to be available. The more general your kid's schedule, probably the more available some of the synchronous learning. If they are taking a lot of specialty classes, especially honors and AP courses, we can almost guarantee that those are not going to be able to be offered synchronously. And so you're either going to have your child learn them through the online platform, or choose and go back to blended learning. A question that gets asked is, so I pick distance learning, the school reaches out to me, and based on what they say, I want to change my mind. Can I? Yes, we're going to let you change your mind when that principal or assistant principal or counselor reaches out to you, if we can't make that schedule work. So we will be in contact with you, and expect that to happen before the last day of school, because we want to be able to turn around, and we need to tell our teachers what they're going to be teaching next year. The week after school starts, we actually start professional development for next year. And so it's important that our teachers know what their classes are that they're teaching, so they can be trained in the right courses. So with that, next slide, Gil. And I've hit our goal. I wanted to make sure that our talking was no longer than half the time. We're exactly there, and really want to turn this over and open this up. Dr. Egan is going into the Q&A, and is going to start reading questions that you have. So if you have questions, you can type them into the Q&A, and we'll spend the next 30 minutes answering any questions that you have that didn't get answered, that you still have, that will help you make a decision. Dr. Egan? So Mr. Murray, you can stop sharing if you'd like. I know, and I think I mentioned this already, but one of the questions that I actually got an email this evening, and they didn't say whether it was an elementary or a secondary student, so I'm going to answer the question in both. They were having somebody come tonight. They weren't able to attend, and they had gone into distance learning the day it came out, and they've now changed their mind. And so the question was, what do I do? And so you can contact us, your child's school. You can't go in and reverse it. We have to reverse it for you. But we've actually had 10 families already who went in right away and have already changed their minds, and then we just back them out of distance learning. So wanted to answer that question ahead of Dr. Egan with questions. So Dr. Egan?
Okay, so the first question, they're asking about a specific course, Project Lead the Way courses being available in distance learning.
Right, good question. So our hands-on Project Lead the Way courses will not be offered in distance learning. Those are hands-on classes. In fact, El Camino College, because they get dual enrollment credit, unless they're there doing their hands-on, that's a hands-on course, they're not going to offer that credit next year. In fact, that's a good question. We are only going to commit to making sure that graduation requirements are covered. So especially for high school, that it's a graduation class, but what the class is, they may not have a choice. We will offer an elective, but what elective that is, there may not be a choice. We may offer a foreign language, but we probably will only offer one language. And so there really is going to be a limited pool of classes for you to choose from.
Okay, the second question, will 7th grade math, science, and English be synchronous classes?
So don't know yet. 7th grade classes, that's why we need that June 1st commitment. It'll be based on that commitment and how many kids there are. Mr. Mara, who has been so kind as to lead this meeting this evening, will have a list for Dr. Egan and I on bright and early on Wednesday, June 2nd. And it will have by grade what course requests your students have asked for. If we have enough students for a course, then we are going to try to offer that course synchronously. So so a 7th grade English class would have more of a chance than accelerated math, where only a subset of kids are in that class, for example. So we won't know that until you commit and we know what our numbers are.
Next question has to do with missing the elementary session. I believe that recording will be available on our district website tomorrow.
Correct.
Next question. My employer is currently allowing telework. However, if they require me to return back to work before school starts, can I change from distance learning and have my child go to school in person? So this question is specifically about changing programs prior to the start of school.
So right now that answer is no. If prior to the start of the school year, there is an adjustment that can be made where there's room in the class, perhaps, but no promises. We have to hire teachers for distance learning. We have to hire teachers for in-person learning, and we are, as Dr. Stowe mentioned, are hiring a lot of additional teachers so we have more spacing in classrooms for the return to school. We will not be hiring we will not be hiring additional teachers to have smaller class sizes for distance learning. And so we need to have room. We will only put the number of kids into a in-person class as we are safely allowed to do so. So it is different from the school year where just stick additional desk over on the side and stick the kid in the class. That will not be an option for us this year. And so if you think that you're going to not be able to, that come June 15th, when the governor lifts all restriction and offices go back, that you're going to go back to work. I mean, my recommendation would be to pick for your child to return to school now.
So the next two questions are related. I'll combine them into one. They're at the attendee is asking about the version of chemistry being offered in distance learning as a course. Will it be eligible for UC or CSU programs? And in addition, there also another attendee is asking about honors and AP classes being available in distance learning.
Yeah, so yes, any course we offer will be UC approved. Okay, so there won't be a problem with approval. The problem with honors and AP is that we can almost guarantee that with only 2% of our students, and remember that was before the vaccination for 12 and up came into being. We anticipate it being even lower, especially in the high school level, when 100% of the students can be vaccinated and return to campus. That we anticipate our high school numbers being very low. So if you want an AP option, your child and not have them be on campus, highly likely, 98, 99%, that they would then have to take that class as an independent study course via Odyssey-ware and learn it online on their own.
Okay, so the next question, again related, asking whether or not AP Psych or Intro to Justice honors classes will be available in distance learning.
They will not. I want to reiterate, there's vaccinations available for age 12 and up. That's halfway through 6th grade through 12th grade. So health-wise, especially for these questions coming from honors and AP classes at the high school level, we are not equipped. We are really looking at very low numbers. As they came in today, we barely have a class to offer anything synchronously. And we know we have another week but we generally, when we've done the surveys, we see the majority of people have already made up their mind. They go in right away, they click, they take care of business. Then we get a lull. And then right the day before or the day of the deadline, we get another another group. If it doubles by next week, which I think is highly unlikely, we're going to be talking about 1 to 1.25% of our kids wanting to not return to school. And so that increases the need for the Odyssey. It becomes more of an independent study program for your child. So there will not be, I can't say this, like I want you to understand this. You will not have the selection available to you. AP Psych is not a requirement. It's an elective. And so, Project Lead the Way, not a requirement. It's an elective. Those courses are not going to be able to be offered. We will offer, an elective. It might be an art class. It might be something that is easier to teach online, like music appreciation, where they can get their A through G fine arts elective requirement done. And so that would be the example of a type of an elective that we could offer. There might be some kind of technology class. We do have a few classes that count for fine arts, but we may have to tell you, here, this is the class, regardless of what you signed up for. This is the art class that will be offered in high school during distance learning.
The next question, I believe I can answer. First year of middle school for our child. Not familiar with the process of picking classes. When does this happen for incoming 6th graders? The school should be in contact with all students who are enrolled. If they haven't already completed a course selection sheet, then they will be asked to do so, hopefully prior to the end of this school year, certainly before the start of next. Okay. Will the students be able to ask questions and communicate with teachers for independent study?
Yeah, so yes, but not in real time. There's scheduled time where the independent study teacher is available for your child. So it isn't that there isn't somebody sitting from, during Spanish class during period 2 that is going to be readily available. They have a caseload, if you will, of students that they manage, and the independent study guidelines is about an hour a week. So not an hour a day per teacher, it's an hour a week total if they were in a full independent study class. It's a very different format and a very different program. So why I spent so much time talking at that very first slide about, is your child an independent learner? Because they've got to be self-motivated and organized, and able to get that time managed and get the work done in the right increments for these classes.
So there was a follow-up question to the chemistry question, and also seeing it here for biology and other lab science courses. How will regular biology or chemistry be taught to distance learners, given that they are lab-based courses?
Yeah, they're lab-based courses. There's a way that you can do those labs online. As a science teacher, as a physics and biology and anatomy teacher myself, yeah, you can do them. They don't, they're not the same as in person, but they do fulfill the UC lab science course requirement that you have. So they will count as a laboratory science class. They're different labs, a selection of different labs that can be done virtually. Imagine, now we don't do this as much anymore, but imagine the frog dissection that maybe many of you did when you were in high school. You can do that frog dissection virtually. So those programs exist for you to still do the lab. You just do them virtually. You're muted, Dr. Egan.
I'm sorry, I had a dog barking. So if the class is not offered in the online program, can the student go to class in person for the class or classes not offered?
Well, so I think one of my questions is, then why are you choosing distance? So possibly, but the likelihood, and I just want you to understand, when we talk about 1% of students, of what a small number that is. So the likelihood that the courses are going to align, because you may be a Torrance High student and that class that you want to come is offered period 1 only, but period 1 is when the South High teacher that's assigned distance learning is going to teach that class for you. So the chance that you're going to be able to put together a in-person and a synchronous schedule, I think that likelihood, I just don't want to overpromise something that will not be able to occur, if that makes sense. And I'm happy to, talk later to, to some of you. It sounds like you've got some really specific, wants as far as your kid's schedule. I reiterate, with the vaccine, sans a medical, issue, I don't know why then, it seems easier with all of these, the different hands-on courses that you would want them to be, in person for the entirety of the day. So it's not that it's impossible. It's just not probable that schedule is going to work very well. It may be that you want to come to campus a couple periods a day, and now you can't do the synchronous class and you have to do more independent study. And that would be, something that we would work on, with you, and you would work with your school with that.
Next question, will my 8th grade child, there's a question here that asks, so what will the distance learning look like? Apologies, but I'm going to forego that question. I just don't want that person to think I'm ignoring it. We can circle back if there's more time, since we did try to address that in the presentation. My 8th grade child, will they be able to take high school classes if in distance learning?
So the majority of any class that an 8th grader takes is an honors course. And so that honors course is not going to be offered synchronously. There won't be enough students collectively across the district for us to offer entire sections of those honors courses, we don't think. And so, we're talking, we don't even have 38th graders, let alone 38th graders that are all wanting to take geometry honors. And so, I wouldn't plan on any class that isn't a general, 7th graders take 7th grade English, 7th grade science, 7th grade math, 7th grade social studies, PE 7, and an elective. That traditional schedule will have more of an opportunity for some live classes than those who have defended into a higher level math class, that are in an accelerated class, that have already taken Spanish and need to come in middle school, and now as an 8th grader want to take Spanish 2 honors. All of these phenomenal pathways that we create for your children are available. They just aren't going to be available for the most part with a live synchronous teacher. They can take Spanish 2, but it's going to be through OdysseyWare as an independent study program. And again, we will know more. We will have these course lists ready next Wednesday, and we have a principals meeting, and we're going to be talking to our principals by the end of the day Wednesday, so that on Thursday next week they can start making contact with families. I don't know what order they're going to make contact. If they're going to make contact with, start with the seniors and go down, start with freshmen and go up, or similarly 6 through 8, or whether they're going to start with the families that the schedules look like they won't work, and then have that discussion with you. So you will be contacted by your child's school, so that you'll know ahead of time. So and we will let you, in those few days before school gets out, switch out of distance learning if you realize that the program isn't going to work for your child.
There's been several questions about asking whether or not my child would need the vaccine to attend in-person learning. I've answered it in typed answer form, but for the entire group here, maybe you could just answer that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. The vaccine is not required. It is recommended. It is highly recommended. But the school districts don't make that determination of what vaccines and when they have to be given. That's something that our legislature does. And so we would need a directive from the legislature, and we have not seen that coming. Likewise, if this question comes up, we've had a few parents ask about knowing whether their teacher has been vaccinated, and that will not be information. They may share that information once your child is in their class, but that's a HIPAA violation. We cannot disclose that information. We can tell you that we had a large majority of our staff get vaccinated. We did it we did our own clinics here, and we're able to get quite a number of our staff vaccinated, but that's not information that we can share with you.
Some other questions similar to that, but we'll circle back if there's time. With regards to the advanced placement honors courses, some of the CSU, UC eligibility for the online OdysseyWare or other software-based programs, I'm going to offer that I'll add a question addressing that in the FAQ and insert a link that provides the availability of the course listing for OdysseyWare to help families have a better point of view of what's available. It's hard, I'm sure, on your end as a parent to hear most will be available, but not knowing which ones wouldn't be. So we'll go ahead and publish that. Let's see. You had stated if there's not enough kids to have a full class, they might have to go to a different school and distance learning. But what if they are a senior?
Okay, so no, so let me clarify. No, the teacher will probably be from another school. So I can guarantee with the numbers that we're seeing already and from the surveys that there aren't going to be classes for like a West High teacher to be or teachers to teach the West High kids. That isn't what's going to happen. More likely, we're gonna meet and we're gonna say, okay, there's enough kids within the school district for there to be a section of government and econ, senior, or a section of senior English. And so it depends on each school, where a teacher will then likely have a schedule where they will have 4 in-person classes and 1 class that they teach as a distance learning class. That teacher could be from any of the 4 high schools. So your child would still be a West High student if they're a senior and that's where they go. They're not going to leave their high school, but they're going to be taking classes with kids from all 4 high schools. And the teacher will probably could be, a West High kid or a teacher, but it could be a teacher from any 4 of the high schools. So we're not making them disenroll from West High School. They just won't go to West High School because they're virtual learning. We talked earlier in the compact that you will be signing that they have to go to school to take assessments, and that will be their home school. What I mentioned earlier was more for a middle school. We anticipate having enough kids that high school kids can remain at their high school. Right now, when I looked at our first glance, we had 1 middle school that only had 2 students. And so if we have very, very, very few students choosing distance learning, we would possibly consolidate and have like 1 middle school between Calumet and Richardson, for example, in the south end, or 1 between Madrona and Hull in the central end, for example. We don't want to do that. We hope to be able to allow you to stay at your home school. That's our intent. But when we designed this, it was ahead of the vaccine becoming available for 12 and up. That vaccine being available for 12 and up has reduced the numbers of families that are needing or wanting distance learning as an option.
Okay, let's see, there's some questions along the lines of the vaccination. Majority of sixth graders will be 11 in August, turn 12 at some point during the school year, will not be vaccine eligible for months. If the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health changes mask guidelines to allow vaccinated students in classrooms without masks, how will you confirm that only vaccinated students are not wearing masks, so unvaccinated students are not improperly exposed?
No, that's a really good question. If we are given that direction, then, you know, similarly to going to a concert or going to Dodger Stadium right now, where they've got a section for vaccinated people, if the rule is if vaccinated, you can then take off your mask, then they would have to show proof of the vaccination. We don't have that guidance yet, and we will follow whatever the guidance says. But similarly, at Dodger Stadium, you want to sit in that section, you have to show proof that you've had the vaccination.
I know we're getting close to the time. I have there's a few more that are a little different from one another.
Okay.
Will TUSD consider changing the deadline from June 1st to June 15th to be in alignment with the upcoming state guidelines from the governor? I think this may help many parents like myself make a decision just in case we are asked to return to work.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sorry, that sounds harsh, but no. And like, as you've heard, there's so many questions about what will this schedule look like for my child? I need to know what that schedule looks like. We can't move any farther in our planning without knowing what courses, without knowing who your children are, and without knowing what courses they selected. So we're at a like, can't do anything right now, and we've got to hurry up. And so so we cannot delay that. That's been, you know, board approved, and even the June 1st date, to quite honestly, is pushing it for us to be able to do all of these contacts with all of our parents, which we are committed to do, and then turn around and finalize a master schedule so that our teachers leave on June 10th, knowing what they're teaching next school year. It's a lot of work when we consider that there's graduation and end of the year activities, you know, with our schools. We're gonna be working really hard just to get it done with that June 1st deadline.
Question about how many days throughout the year does the student have to go to the school for assessments? If your child is assigned to a different school, will she have to participate in extracurricular programs from that school?
Right. Yeah, no, we want them to be able to participate in the extracurricular activities at their school if you can get them there. And so the assessment piece, I can't answer yet. It depends on your courses. And it depends on how, I mean, that'll be something that the distance learning teachers are going to talk about. We don't want you traveling back and forth. There'll be a test period 1, I have to go to school. Now I got to go back. We will come up with a schedule where it's a reasonable assessments. Every quiz you're not going to have to come to school to do, but major tests. We do have teachers, quite honestly, hugely concerned, especially in mathematics, where kids Googled the answer and there was quite a bit of cheating. And it's less about what grade did my child get, that aside. They're expected to have mastered that material so they can go on, and many of our classes are additive. and by child's own admittance, we had students who logged on at board meetings who said, we all cheat on every single one of our tests. And now I don't know how rampant that is, but our teachers are very concerned that that doesn't allow them to monitor learning, and that doesn't allow them to know what it is that the kids need help with. You know, our kids, they're understanding that when we know they don't know things, that helps us teach them better. But that's a maturity that doesn't come maybe at so much. And so the major tests are going to be taken in person, and that will be worked out, once the program is completely developed.
Question that's come up from a few different
Okay,
folks.
2 more questions, Dr. Egan.
Sure. In relation to vaccination currently, wondering about the percentage of our staff as well as students that have currently been vaccinated. Not looking for names or any violation of HIPAA. And I could go on record and say I don't think we have any information around students. Percentage of staff would be only in perspective of the entire district. We wouldn't have necessarily the information in terms of secondary school employees.
Right. I mean, I can tell you that as of today, over 50% of eligible people in I think it was Los Angeles County that came out in our, we get daily alerts from the Department of Public Health, have been vaccinated. There is supposed to be a tie into what that means for the Torrance community. Torrance and beach cities have always been ahead of by 10 to 20 percentile points of vaccination. So if that's something that's supposed to be available to us, it's easier in Torrance because our boundaries and our city and our boundaries of our school district are one and the same. But you'd have to hypothesize, if 70% of eligible residents in Torrance have been vaccinated, and that's at least 1 shot, because you can't have had 2 shots if you're 12, the 12 through 15-year-olds haven't had time yet. And you could hypothesize that that's equal, and I don't know. I mean, we can't keep that data. I do know that when our teachers return to school, just as uncomfortable as you might be, well, so were they. That your children, they know that they were following the rules. They had and they see that, they don't know what you're doing at your home. And we put 16 bodies in front of them, multiple times a day. I think many of them felt much safer by getting a vaccination, but we aren't allowed to keep that information at this point, and so we don't know.
Okay, the final question: if class size and availability is the criterion for disallowing a parent from changing his or her mind, how are you going to enforce the policy of distance learning contracts not working and having the child return to school for in-person?
No, good question. And it may not, and at that point, if we're pulling a contract, that's why I really want you to know who your child is. And if you think that that's going to be your child, let's not go there. Because that's not helping your child's well-being by failing at something because they needed more assistance, at school. And so we're hoping to not have to, put it this way, if we did that this year, there would have been a lot more of that, right? We weren't able to do that. We were open. We're hoping that you have all learned about how your child is doing and you can help make that decision. That being said, where we have to put them might not be back at their home school. So don't, I hate to sound that harsh, but if we have to return them, they're going to get returned somewhere where there's space. We had a couple of issues with a couple of families this year, and we returned them to school, and they went into the library and they did their distance learning from the library because we had to help. They had to get up and come to school. They weren't I think sometimes parents thought they were getting up and their parents left for work and they rolled back into bed. And we kept very careful track throughout the entire year. Schools had to keep track of, we called it the queue. That was just our fancy name for kids who are not engaging in class. And so we kept and so if you would know this about your child, because we would have reached out to you. And so I just ask you to make that decision ahead of time if you think your child is going to struggle, in this way. Juniors and seniors who've been doing this for the past year and a half may have a little bit better handle themselves. Middle school kids, I had 2 children that went through the Torrance schools myself. One was a GATE student. No way in heck would he have been able to handle this. Straight A, graduated from college with honors. No way in heck. My younger child, he would have done it. So you know your children, and if I was nervous about returning my older child, I would have just had to be nervous and return my older child, because there was no way he would have attended to school if we weren't. Don't tell him I said that, but no way would he have done that at that age.
Dr. Crumpy, they're just asking how to contact someone for further questions. And I'm also posting in the chat one more time the sign in. It looks like several people have signed into that. So if you didn't see it, click on the link, please, and add your name so we know who attended.
Right. So your child's administrators are participating in this meeting. They're on the participant side. You see Mr. Ashikawa, who has kindly agreed to, the Casimir principal has agreed to sit in today in case we got stumped by something that only a school principal would know. And so we thank him, but they're here, they know. And so, they can answer your questions. I've received 2 emails since this started, so I know that many of you know how to find me or Dr. Egan. But we're happy to take your emails, and that's a reason why we did this today. So your principals are ready. We asked them to attend tonight so they could hear this, so they could be ready for your questions. We know, and we did this a week ahead of decision day, so that you have that time to reach out the rest of this week. And if your principal doesn't know the answer, they know how to contact us, and you can email us directly. I probably did a few hundred of those a day during the summer. I'm trying to help families with their decisions. So we're more than happy to have you shoot us an email. But principals and assistant principals at your school are also ready to go with those questions. Okay, so I want to thank our translators that have attended both sessions tonight, and they are now also ready because they could now give the next presentation. I've joked with them already, but so they're ready, so that if there's families that are feeling uncomfortable that they're not fluent in English, we can also help schedule a time for the translator to call and be able to answer questions. And they are very professional and great at their jobs, and they won't answer a question that they don't know the answer to. They will seek it out and get back to you. So if you need those translation services, your school or Dr. Egan and I, we can assist with that as well. So with that, thank you very, very much. Thank you for attending this evening, and good luck to you. We really look forward to the last couple of weeks of school and starting school in the fall. So thank you very much.